Make yours run like new. Get a car care package for just Firestone.
Gee, I'll never forget. There was a great Zen master I knew once in New York.
Hey.
Now,
A little bit. I definitely am. 12 hours of work. Like the last 5 hours of the day was complete chaos. So shift change didn't go too well, and night shift was mad at me because why isn't things the way they're supposed to be? Dude, I had a rough last few hours of my shift. Like, deal with it. You're on the clock. Get your ass to fucking work, you know? And then I wasn't going to go to the gym, but I still hit the gym anyway. And that took my last little bit of energy. Well, not the last little bit. This is what I am going to utilize my last little bit of energy on, is some artwork. So, yes indeed. I am tired. This is one of those days, you know? It didn't seem like it was going to be that kind of day when it started out, but yeah, it turned into one of those days like, I'm ready for it to be over with. I just want to eat dinner and go to sleep. Try this thing again tomorrow. Yeah, see if I can come up with a different result. Oh man, I wish there was a way I can get fired from my job and still be able to collect unemployment. I swear, I would sit on my ass for a year collecting unemployment and just painting every day. Oh, Mr. Prince, you're not looking for a job. Yeah, I am looking for a job. I am. Don't you worry about that unemployment office. I am looking for a job. Don't you worry. All right. I actually have to. Yeah, I need to put some more colors back on there. I know, right? If it was that easy, just
we would say with Hindus and Buddhists that if I run into a catastrophe, it is my karma. You see, that means far more than that it is a punishment for something I did wrong in the past. That is a legalistic view of karma. But a naturalistic or organic view of karma is, in fact, that what happens to me is what I do. And that in a certain sense, I want what happens to me. We can use want, notice how we use this word. It means to desire and it means to lack or to need. We say to somebody, you're wanting, you're deficient in something. So it's rather alarming, really, when you consider it, that you always get what you want. Invariably. Even though you may think that it's entirely opposed to your wishes. But if it's your karma, everything that happens to you, put it in another way, everything that comes to you is a return to you of what goes out of you. Yes, obviously, that's absurd. If you confine the definition of yourself to your voluntary, conscious behavior, that's a ridiculous definition of oneself. Oneself, by any stretch of the imagination, must involve far more than the conscious and voluntary aspects of our behavior. And if we see that it involves intimately and inescapably the behavior of what we call the environment, and see that these two are moving together like the two sides of the snake when it swims, then you get a very curious feeling. You have to be careful of it if you've got a Western background. Because this is what happens to a lot of people who play around with psychedelic chemicals. There are many, many cases of inflation among these people. That is to say, when you get this sensation that the inside and the outside are moving together, you may think, I am ruling it. I am God in the Western sense of the word. Therefore, your ego, instead of being, as it were, integrated and transcended with all this process, merely assumes vast dimensions, is blown up by the mystical experience. So you get the holier-than-thou people going around who seem to think that they're above all human conventions and have no obligations to anyone or anything because they're divine and they can do as they damn please. What they haven't realized is that doing as you will isn't a new kind of behavior that you suddenly put on and say, from now on I'm going to go around doing as I will. You have to realize first that that's what you've always been doing. And you could look at this from a very simple point of view. But now what about the people who did good and who did the things that they didn't want to do? You know, everybody's mother said to us, darling, sometimes we have to do things we don't like. What about that? Well, you can always say, the kid obeyed the mother and did the thing that he didn't like because that was the better part of wisdom. In other words, if he hadn't done that, something worse would have happened. Choose the lesser of two evils. And when you find yourself in a situation where you have to choose the lesser of two evils, then you say, I want out of here. And you take the easiest way. You take the line of least resistance. So that's your doing. Now, you can pursue that more profoundly when you stop thinking about human behavior as something that responds to the compulsion of an environment. And you can get out of that when you see the behavior of the environment as an essential aspect of you. So it isn't, as it were, the environment starting something which you are therefore compelled to follow. It's the whole system moving together. So then you get in the state of liberated or mystical consciousness. You very often feel that a hill is lifting you up as you walk up it. The ground seems to heave beneath your feet and up you go. And you get this strange feeling of lightness, of effortlessness. Walking on air, never a care, you know. This wonderful sense that there are no obstructions anywhere. There's nothing, as it were, banging you and making you do that. It all flows together. And that's a very common sense. you are actually, in that state of consciousness, you are perceiving the goings-on, the Tao, the course of nature, in the way it's happening. But in the ordinary way, you've been conditioned to resist it, to fight it, and to use those sensations of resistance to create a sensory basis for what you describe as the ego. The ego, in practice, is a sense of strain. When you are aware of I, you are aware of a basic discomfort, which is located basically between the eyes, somewhere in here. A sort of tightness. Also, it's in other centers too. It's in the solar plexus, and there are various physical centers, in other words, where this constant tension or resistance against it is going on. And that's what you feel when you talk about I. When that tension ceases, you discover immediately that the separate ego has disappeared, and that what I refers to is simply the total panorama of experience, everything that's happening. That's I. Obviously, I don't know all of it, because I can't inspect all of it with my radar, with my conscious attention. That would be a ridiculous undertaking, to know everything in that sense. We know it in a much better way, as we know how to grow hair and open and close our hands. So, this point of view can be understood if we clarify the initial problems we have about it. And I suppose the first problem is, if we accept the notion that everything that happens to us is our own karma, our own doing, then we have to be very careful of, shall we say, the devil of omnipotence, of inflation, of feeling that your ego is what is in control of all this. And the second thing is, if you think then that everything that happens to everybody is what they really want to happen, then you can absolve yourself from any qualms about being unkind to someone, because you could say, well, the unkindness I did you was what you really wanted, wasn't it? You know that business about the responsibility of the person who gets murdered for getting murdered? There is a curious sense in which a lot of people go around looking for trouble. Freud pointed out quite correctly the psychology of accident-prone individuals. They seem to be attracting trouble like lights attract moths. And we're all doing that, but we manage to remain unconscious of it, so that we can praise and blame and play the game that says, that's not my fault, that's your fault. And so we go around apportioning faults to everybody. Because if we're going to apportion praise for what the good things people do, you can't make praise mean anything unless you also go around blaming. praise and blame go together. Supposing everybody was acting in a praiseworthy way, and we praised everybody for everything, they'd get tired of it. They wouldn't even notice it anymore. So long as you're going to get a kick out of being praised, you've got to go around blaming too. It's very simple. But if you see the folly of that praising and blaming are just creating each other, then you don't praise and you don't blame. You just dig the whole thing. And that's why, when we encounter very great sages, you never hear them blame people, and they very rarely praise anyone. You try to start gossip in the presence of such a person, and you make a derogatory comment about someone. It's as if you had thrown a rock into a well and heard no splash. And a funny feeling, because that you get no response. You get no agreement. And if you praise somebody, there's also likely nothing to be said, except perhaps some remark that, of course, you're praising the beloved in all its manifestations.
You want to really, you really want to know who I'm listening to? Ah, shit. I'm fucking up the paint. Dang. You really want to know who this guy is, man? His name is, I'll tell you. Hold on, I'll tell you in a minute.
And this disconcerts some people terribly. I've always noticed that real sages never gossip, never criticize persons. And because they understand so well. The French saying, tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner, to understand all is to forgive all, is so true if you're experienced in just the ordinary way of dealing with human problems. You've been a counselor or psychotherapist or minister or anything like that. You very soon get to realize how vastly complicated people are. And to see that they really are in the messes they're in not because of anything, but that's the way it is.
Hey, babe. No? Where you at? I was gonna say Taco Bandito. Whichever one is easier. Yes. Okay. Alright. Alright. Alright, so yeah, gingerbread. That's crazy. I made a picture of a turkey in my hand this one time when I was in like first grade. But yo, Ronnie, what I'm listening to is this dude name is Alan Watts with an S on it, and you can't really see it if I put it up there, but somebody just took some of his lectures. What up, 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 what up? But somebody just took a bunch of his lectures and took little snippets and excerpts from them and put it over some chill step. And you remember when dubstep first came out? That shit was hot though. I like Skrillex. I ain't even gonna lie. You know what I'm saying? I was liking that dude Flex Pavilion too. Oh my god, yo, hey, Flex Pavilion had this one track called damn, I can't think of it, but if you look him up, that's probably gonna be one of his top tracks, yo. Cannon or some shit. That shit was crazy as hell. But anyway, so instead of dubstep, motherfucker just started mixing like more chill, mellow music and then called it chill step, which is nice. You can study to it. You can write poetry to it. You know, you just relax, do some yoga to it. But then somebody got even more clever and said, yo, I like listening to Alan Watts and I like listening to chill step. What if I listen to Alan Watts and chill step at the same time? And it was like, ding, and now we got this fucking awesome ass mix from Alan Watts, chill step, and there's like 16 mixes up here, man. They got a bunch of some of his good lectures, and then you can just look up Alan Watts by himself with no music and just listen to his lectures. They're still awesome like that because his just his viewpoints and how he tried to describe and convey the teachings that he learned, you know.
stop blaming people. And because you don't blame people, you have open ears and people come and seek your advice. They don't want to come to someone who's a counselor who will bawl them out. It's like dentists who simply accept the fact that people really don't take care of their teeth and realize that the job of a dentist is precisely to look after people who can't be bothered to take care of their teeth. That's why he's in business. So a good dentist doesn't bawl his patients out because they didn't do this, that, and the other. Just accept it. Same with doctors. They know perfectly well that nobody's going to live by the rules of health. And they're very vague as to what they are. And, you know, there's every kind of theory about how you ought to live, what is healthy, but they change in fashion. And you ought to eat this kind of diet in 1921. By the time it's 1930, they've changed their ideas altogether. By the time it's 1960, it's back again to a mixture between 1921 and 1894. Something like that. You see, it's always changing. So, while the rules are not so... You see, if they were all absurd, it would be easy. But they're not all absurd. There's some truth in it, always. But nobody's ever quite sure. Function of healers and doctors and so on is just to do what can be done to stop the mess getting too messy. And they must accept it as that. That's their job. If I were healthy, I'd say to the doctor, I wouldn't need you. So you're in business. Now, what about it then? We have difficulty in seeing this mutuality of our relationship to the rest of the world because it's contrary to common sense, contrary to the way we've been brought up. And therefore we have what I would call an initial intellectual block to understanding. Quite apart from any emotional blocks or anything of that kind. But obviously, we must overcome that intellectual block if we're going to go any further and actually realize and feel this way of life's working, this relationship between what you do and what happens to you.
If you want to purchase some original art, custom paintings, prints, or anything like that, you can contact me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Paintings by the Prince. And if you're not on social media, you can go to my website, which is travisprince.blogspot.com, or you can email me directly at travisprince81@yahoo. Most of the time, the easiest way is probably through Facebook or Instagram. I notice more and more, even major corporations, major .coms will redirect you to their Facebook page. Walmart.com is like us on Facebook. McDonald's.com is like us on Facebook. Now you might as well just go straight to Facebook then. It's like, open market, I guess. But most people have that. All right, if you're on the PS4 like I am right now, you can send me a message on PlayStation Network. My gamer tag is Trap House ENT, stands for Trap House Entertainment. So you can message me on the PlayStation. There are several different ways to contact me and communicate, so we can get you some nice, beautiful museum quality art in your house. Signed by yours truly. Created by yours truly. That's what everybody wants, right? This shit is gonna be worth millions. I keep telling people, I've been telling people for the past couple years, man, hurry up. I need something to drink. Damn. If y'all really like this art, man, y'all need to hurry up and grab some of this stuff while it's kind of cheap. Cause once I break through to the main scene, and I'm doing shows in Italy and Dubai, Paris, when I'm in places like that, man, I ain't gonna lie, man, this shit might be out of your price range. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't no movie star, or at least the lead actor of a TV series or something, you might not be able to afford this shit. Cause this shit gonna go from $400 to $500. It gonna go to $40,000 to $50,000. I'm telling you, on some Basquiat shit. So snatch it up while it's cheap, while it's affordable, while it's still new. And see, that's something else. So like, in 10 years, when I'm super uber famous and shit, you can be like, yo, I got one of his early pieces before, his stardom. You know what I'm saying? This dude was just on YouTube, on PlayStation. But now look at him. He's at the Louvre. He's at the Museum for Modern Art, Toronto. This dude is everywhere. I seen him and Kende Wiley do a show together. You know what I'm saying? Him and Fahamu Peku did a show together. That's what y'all gonna be saying about me. It's gonna be awesome. Oh yeah. The Prince? Nah. My average price, you can probably get a nice size painting from me for around about $500, $600. I say my starting price is $400 just to let everyone know, like, I'm not gonna touch a project for less than $400. But normally you're gonna pay a little bit more than $400. You know, that $400 is just the platform starting price to say, okay, we're gonna start here, nothing lower. But it really all depends on the photograph. You know, every photograph is different. If you get me a picture of yourself, just one person in a photograph, and you got on a solid blue shirt, hey, that's going to be a certain price. Now, if it's the same photo of you, just one person in the photograph, and you got on a motherfucking toboggan that has fucking camouflage on that shit, you got on a Burberry scarf and a goddamn Coogee sweater, you know, all those different textures, colors, and things, that adds more detail, more time to the piece, so it adds more to the price. So it really all depends on the detail of the photograph, how many faces are in there. I'll charge you less to paint one face than it would to paint two faces. You feel me? So it really all depends. That's why I tell everybody, look, let me see the picture. You want me to do a custom project for you, send me the picture, and I'll give you a price. If you can agree on it, then boom, we in business. If not, it is what it is.
And how these two ever influence each other, nobody ever decides.
But this is a commission I'm working on right here. Rewind that a little bit. No, what is my stream name? My stream name is, I'm pretty sure it's just Travis Prince.
Only we come to this point of view with very different assumptions than were held by people like Hegel or Berkeley or Bradley, great idealists of the European metaphysical tradition, and probably rather more akin to similar trends in Buddhist philosophy.
He said the European metaphysical
Doctors and so on is just to do what can be done to stop the mess get.
When you get into metaphysics, it's like it's ancient committed teachings.
Too messy, and they must accept it as that. That's their job. If I were healthy, I'd say to the doctor, I wouldn't need you. So you're in business. Now, what about it then? We have difficulty in seeing this mutuality of our relationship to the rest of the world, because it's contrary to common sense, contrary to the way we've been brought up. And therefore we have what I would call an initial intellectual block to understanding, quite apart from any emotional blocks or anything of that kind. But obviously, we must overcome that intellectual block if we're going to go any further and actually realize and feel this way of life's working, this relationship between what you do and what happens to you. How past the middle of the 20th century there's a very strong evidence of a revival in Western philosophy of what used to be called idealism, not in the moral sense but in the metaphysical sense. That is to say, of the feeling that the external world is in some way a creation of the mind. We come to this point of view with very different assumptions than were held by people like Hegel or Berkeley or Bradley, great idealists of the European metaphysical tradition, and probably rather more akin to similar trends in Buddhist philosophy emerging from India about 400 AD. The difference of approach, the difference of the way in which today this thing arises, and the way in which it arose in the thought of a man like Bishop Berkeley, is that the new idealism has a kind of curiously physical basis. When one would argue, everything you know is in your mind, and the distance, the feeling of externality between you and other objects and people is also a content of consciousness, and therefore it's all your consciousness. This of course created all sorts of weird feelings. Are things there when I'm not witnessing them, or is there anybody else there, or are you all my personal dream? one has only to imagine a conference of such people, of solipsists, those who believe that they alone exist, arguing as to which one of them is really there, to make the whole idea rather laughable. Furthermore, there seemed to be no clarity in such philosophical thinking as to what the term mind or consciousness meant. Mind and soul and spirit were always vague and formless. And matter, by contrast, was very rugged, craggly. Two ever influenced each other, nobody ever could decide. Because all properly behaved ghosts walk straight through brick walls without disturbing either the bricks or the ghost.
I mean, I think that it makes sense.
And so how can a mind incarnate in a material body move that body in any way? This was always a puzzle. So people began to think that the differentiation between mind and matter was of no use. Because actually what happens in making such a differentiation is that you impoverish both sides of it. It's the same way when you get a mystic who's not a bit of a sensualist, and a sensualist is no whit of a mystic. Such a sensualist is boring. Such a mystic is a fanatic, too spiritual. It's the same when we divide the medical profession from the priesthood. Both are losers. Not just because they lose their so-called opposite half, but the problem is when you separate a doctor from a priest, you do more than create a specialization out of what was originally one field. You create two specializations. Because a priest-physician is more than a priest plus a physician. By having, as it were, the binocular vision from medicine and from religion, he just doesn't see two added areas. He sees the area in three dimensions. as a result of this combination? Well, in a similar way, when we have the concepts of mind and matter working separately, both are impoverished. Mind becomes vague, kind of gas, psychic gas, and matter becomes mere stuff. And then furthermore, to observe something, either simply by looking at it, or more so by making experiments, by doing science on it, you alter what you're looking at. You cannot carry out an observation without in some way interfering with what you observe. It is this that we try when we're watching, say, the habits of birds, to be sure that the birds don't notice us, that we're watching. To watch something, it must not know you're looking. And of course, what you ultimately want to do is to be able to watch yourself without knowing that you're looking. Then you can really catch yourself not on your best behavior and see. And likewise, the physicist cannot simultaneously establish the position and the velocity of very minute particles or wavicles. And it's in part because the experiment of observing nuclear behavior alters and affects what you're looking at. This is one side of it. The inseparability of man and his world, which deflates the myth of the objective observer, standing aside and observing a world that is merely mechanical, a thing that operates like a machine out there. Science of neurology, we understand so clearly now that the kind of world we see is relative to the structure of the sense organ. That, in other words, what that used to be called the qualities of the external world, its qualities of weight or color, texture, and so on, are possessed by it only in relation to a perceiving organism. The very structure of our optical system confers light and color upon outside energy. And in this sense then, especially if you want to read a very easily digestible account of this thing, you get the book by J.Z. Young called Doubt and Certainty in Science. But you see here, from a new basis altogether, we have a new answer to the old riddle. If a tree falls in the forest when nobody is listening, does it make a noise? The answer, in terms of modern science, is perfectly clear. that the falling tree creates vibrations in the air, and these become noise if and only if they relate to an eardrum and to an auditory nervous system. Just as in ordinary drums, however hard you hit, the drum will make no sound if it has no skin. Because sound is not something that exists in the external world. Sound is a relationship between vibrating air and certain kinds of biological organisms. And therefore it is these organisms which confer what we call sound upon a vibration which in an earless world would make no noise. Now you see, that is perfectly clear and straightforward. But now we can dare we take certain steps from that? Could we say, for example, that before any organisms existed, there was no world? And what we're talking about when we talk about a world prior to the existence of organisms is what is called an extrapolation. Let me explain extrapolation for a moment. Supposing you have a map of Kansas, and you want, from the evidence contained in the map, to guess at what kind of territory lies beyond its edges. Well, naturally, you will extend those straight line roads.
All right, guys. Appreciate you stopping by to check me out
Nothing in the map of Kansas.
and holla at your boy for a minute. Still working on these commissions. I got 2 more days of work, so I'll only get an hour or so in the evenings to work on it. But her face is coming out pretty good. A lot of the curves in her features are starting to be more prominent. So I just got to work my way to the edge of her cheek right here, and then down around her neck, and then I'll start on his face next. Yeah, no problem, Ronnie. But yeah, like I say, tomorrow evening, I don't know if I'll even hit the gym tomorrow. I might just take a break and just get an early stream in and try to put a couple hours in on this project to kind of push it a little faster and just dedicate more time in the studio. But once again, guys, definitely appreciate you guys stopping by, man, and checking me out. You're awesome. Always come through with good comments, compliments, questions. You know how we do in here, listening to some good Alan Watts this evening. Don't forget to check out some of his other stuff. So, with that being said, peace. Until next time.
So naturally, you see, extrapolation, we extrapolate from what we know to the unknown.